Hey, welcome back. Today we're talking about how to invest in an Airbnb property. So if you're interested in getting into Airbnb and you're not quite sure how to do it or what to do, this is the video for you. We're going to be talking about everything from researching the market to managing your properties and everything in between. All right, so over the last number of years, I've worked hands-on with a number of professional Airbnb real estate investors. And I tell you what, I've seen things change radically over the years. Back in the day when Airbnbs first got started, it was all about basically renting out your spare bedroom in your house and making a few extra bucks. Now it has morphed into purpose-built buildings that people are doing completely on Airbnb, or short-term rentals is the other term for this. But again, Airbnb is the biggest platform to promote short-term rentals. So for the purposes of this, we'll be talking about this as Airbnb. So one of the first things that my clients do when they're looking at doing an Airbnb deal is they really research the market that they're going to be investing in. So a lot of people get started by investing in their own backyard. They might even get started by turning their own home into an Airbnb property if they've got a secondary suite. And that's a good way to get started. However, where you live may or may not be a really good spot to have an Airbnb. So if you're doing this seriously as a business, what you want to do is you want to research the location that you're going to be doing your Airbnb in, the city, the state, the county, the locality of that. And you want to make sure that it is relatively friendly towards short-term rentals. So, there are certain cities and towns that really hate Airbnb or short-term rentals. So if at all possible, you want to kind of avoid those areas. You want to make life as easy as possible for yourself. On the other hand, there are locales, there are communities that are very open to short-term rentals, or at least willing to put up with it. So you want to find a community that is at least putting up with having short-term rentals in it. Now, the other thing you want to look at when it comes to location is what kind of a property are you going to be turning into an Airbnb? And I've seen a lot of people come up with challenges over the years because they have a condominium that they turn into a short-term rental, but then either the city or the condo association itself changes the rules and forbids having short-term rentals in that building or in that area. And that can cause a lot of problems, especially if that's been your main source of income. So you want to make sure that if you're going to be buying a condominium as your Airbnb, that it's allowed in that building. Does that make sense? All right, so once you've kind of figured out what location you want to be investing in, where you want to be buying your Airbnb property, then you want to look at what kind of a property are you going to purchase? What kind of amenities is that property going to have? So again, if you're just kind of doing this with your own house, well, it is what it is. But if you're going to be buying a property, or if you're going to be renting a property and subletting it as an Airbnb, then you want to make sure that it's attractive for the kind of clientele that you're going to be looking for. So again, like everything, when it comes to Airbnb and short-term rentals, there's the low end of the market and then there's the very high end of the market. What I've seen a lot of people have success at is kind of that Goldilocks formula, finding something that's kind of in the middle. So a lot of people have gotten started and done something like with a small one-bedroom or studio condo. That's great. However, you're limited by the number of people that you can fit in there. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I've seen people get into luxury homes, mini mansions or actual mansions that they rent out as Airbnbs, which is great, but the price point for that is so high that it's going to just limit the number of people that can actually get into your Airbnb. So kind of the sweet spot is something that is family friendly, that you can rent the whole place out to one person or one group of people and maximize your profit. So quite often we've seen this has been 2 or 3 bedroom type properties. If you want to get top dollar, you want to make sure that they're in tip-top condition, very nicely furnished, nice amenities. If you're in a location that the climate permits, you can have a pool, that's awesome. That just goes a long ways to increasing your profitability as well. So take a look at the kind of property that you're going to be buying and using as an Airbnb. All right, next thing you want to take a look at is how do you set up your property to get top dollar as an Airbnb, a short-term rental? And this has a lot to do with amenities and furnishings and curb appeal and photographs. So you want to make sure that you don't cheap out on the furnishing of your property. So don't just run down to the used the used furniture store and stock up there. Don't just go to IKEA and get all the cheapest stuff that you can get. Actually, if you want to get top dollar for your property, invest in really good furnishings and professional interior design. So you may or may not be the right person for doing that, but there are people that can help you out and make sure that it looks super sharp. Next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you've got good photographs of that property so that when you post it on Airbnb and VRBO and all the different sites that you can promote your short-term rental on, that it really pops and gets people's eyeballs. So got to look at the amenities, you got to look at how you do the furnishings, and don't go cheap. All right, the next thing you want to take a look at is pricing and marketing of your property. You want to make sure that you're competitive, but you're not undercharging or overcharging. So again, sites like Airbnb and VRBO, you can kind of do some market research and figure out what other properties that are in similar area, similar condition are charging, and charge accordingly. There are software programs out there these days, management programs out there that can actually kind of do this like the airlines and like the hotels, where your pricing fluctuates depending on supply and demand. Have you ever noticed that if you go in to rent a car, buy an airline ticket, get a hotel room, the price is not the same one week to the next. It fluctuates all the time. You can do the same thing with your property, and you can put that on autopilot with the right software. I'm not going to recommend any particular software because they change and come and go kind of thing, but you can do a quick Google search there and find out which one works best today. So get that dialed in, and that way you can be super competitive with your pricing and maximize your profitability. Another quick tip on how to set up your property for Airbnb is you want to automate as much as possible of the whole process. So this can be as simple as having cameras installed in the entryway, as well as electronic locks on the doors, so that way you can text message somebody the code so that they can get into the property. You can change the codes after they're done. You can do all of this stuff remotely instead of having to meet with people face to face. Now, this gets into the whole management of your short-term rental property. This can be a lot of work if you haven't had any experience doing this kind of stuff, because you're almost like a hotel. Instead of having a tenant who's staying there for a long time, you have guests who are staying there for a short period of time and who have very high expectations. So if something breaks down, they aren't going to wait days or weeks to get that fixed. They want to get it fixed immediately. If there's something that's missing, they don't want to see that. So they don't want to go into a place that doesn't have toilet paper. They don't want to go into a place that doesn't have sheets and blankets and all of that kind of stuff ready to go. So you got to keep on top of that, and you have to be very, very responsive to people when they make a request. Why is that important? Because your whole business relies on ratings and reviews. If you start getting some negative reviews on your property, that's going to dampen the effectiveness of your marketing, and it's going to lower your profitability. So you got to keep on top of all of that kind of stuff. Here's the good news. If you really don't want to do that, there are management companies out there who will do this for you. You just have to see who's available in the area that you're going to have your properties. Again, this is another advantage of having an Airbnb or short-term rental somewhere where it's already quite popular, because there are already businesses that are set up to manage these things for you. So check that out. Now, all this talk about short-term rentals and Airbnb reminds me of a client that I was just working with, Shaheen. Shaheen is a long-time real estate investor. He got started like many of us did with long-term buy and hold of single-family homes. Then he started getting into suited properties. I saw that the cash flow was better on those. And then he started getting into furnishing some of these properties and putting them out as short-term rentals, as Airbnbs. And he was doing this in his local vicinity. And then he came across something very, very interesting. He came across the opportunity to do purpose-built short-term rentals. So he found a resort area not too far away from where he lives. It's very, very popular kind of year-round. And he bought a couple of properties, actually I think he's up to 7 now, that are purpose-built for being short-term rentals. So these are very, very lovely properties. They're all set up right from the day one with all of the amenities that are required. and he's able to charge premium dollar because there's just year-round demand for these kind of properties. In fact, he was telling me about one of his most successful deals just this last summer. He made $8,000 for 1 week of booking for this property that covered all of his expenses for the month, plus a significant profit for the month, and that was only renting out the property for 1 week. Everything after that was pure gravy. And he does this month in, month out. He's very, very keen on this. So one of his big ideas is, instead of just having an Airbnb in a regular community, go to a luxury resort community and then get a luxury resort style property that you can charge top dollar for. So that's exactly what he's doing. He's having great success. And what I did with him was what I call a capital blueprint intensive, where we spent a number of hours, half a day actually, really diving in and creating a whole game plan for him for raising private capital so that he can rinse and repeat and do this over and over again. He's very, very excited about where this is going to take him, and he's poised to explode his portfolio using other people's money. So that brings us up to our next tip, and that is, what are you going to do to finance these properties? It doesn't really matter where you're going to be buying them. There's a couple of different choices that you have. So one thing is, you can do what's called Airbnb arbitrage. And that basically means you find a property and you find the owner and you rent the property from that owner with the right to sublet it as an Airbnb property. So this way you don't actually have to buy the property. All you have to do is lease it or rent it and furnish it, and then you do your business from there. So there's a lot of people doing that, Airbnb arbitrage, and that's very, very enticing, especially when you're first getting started, because it keeps your overhead low. However, you still have to come up with money for furnishing that property, and you want to make sure that you've got a little nest egg to cover repairs and that sort of thing, and in case you need to carry it for a while until you start getting things up and going with your rentals. So that's one option. The other option is you buy a property and you retrofit it and you get it fixed up and all furnished and interior decorated and the whole bit, staged and ready to go as a short-term rental. But that's going to involve you coming up with money for down payments, closing costs, furnishing, the whole bit there. So that tends to be very, very capital intensive. So what do you do there? If you don't have the cash to do it yourself, guess what? There are other people who would love to get involved with these Airbnb type deals, but don't have the knowledge, the experience, the wherewithal to do it themselves. They would love to partner with you and do a joint venture to do these deals with you. That's exactly what Shaheen's doing. He's got a partner on 3 properties already. He's got 4 more properties coming down the pipeline. He's getting a group of people to joint venture with him on those properties, and that's how he's able to expand. And you can do the same thing. All right. Speaking of raising capital to buy more short-term rentals, Airbnb properties, if you're looking at how to do that, then I've got the perfect resource for you. I've got my book. It's called Money Partner Formula. The price is right. You can get it for free. Just click on the link in the description below or go to investorattractionbook.com. And this will go through my whole process for attracting investors and joint venture partners to you. That way you'll have all the capital you want to do all of the Airbnb deals that you want to do as well. Get your copy today.